Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. I wanted to give another report on the situation in Gaza. Contrary to a report that was given earlier, which said that the war in Gaza would only last another few weeks, it now appears that that same war will go on for about 7 more months. And that's just the report. So if it changed from 3 weeks to 7 months in 1 week, I don't think we can necessarily assume that there will not be future changes as well. Again, my concern is for the innocent people that are dying, the families, the children, especially the children who often have lost their parents, who are hiding out, who experience continual bombings, the threat of being shot. That's what bothers me. In other words, I am concerned as a Maoist third worldist about what is happening to people living in that third world and fourth world part of our globe. I am not alone. Fortunately, I am not alone. Again, fortunately, I am also not the only person of Jewish ancestry to oppose this war. I am one of the organizers of the Bund under Abraham Weisfeld, and we are an anti-Zionist organization with Jewish values, and we are basically opposed to the kind of horrendous war that is taking place right now in Gaza. And we hope for the end of this war, and we would like to see some type of resolution for the indigenous people of Palestine, which basically also includes Jordan. Jordan is really a part of Palestine. There are many Palestinians who live there, but for political reasons, back when Greater West Asia or the Middle East was being determined or divided up by Europe, Jordan was made into an independent country and was not made a part of Palestine. So I don't think that that can be reversed. We are basically uh, left with that situation for the time being anyway, at least until the end of the capitalist world system. And all I can say once again is that as a Maoist third worldist, as a Bhaskarian critical realist, as an intersectional Marxist, as Antifa, I hope that that war, that authoritarian war that is destroying the lives of so many innocents who have been falsely labeled as, of all things, Nazis, comes to an end very, very soon. Again, as I've said before, I am a person with a religion, and in my religion, there is a teaching about eternal punishment and eternal reward. And I believe, although I don't know, that the people who are engaging in this war, whoever they are, will suffer some form of eternal punishment. Exactly what that will mean, I have no idea. And that the wonderful Gazans, the people who are being subjected to this horrendous situation, this crime against humanity, will receive that eternal reward when they leave this world and enter the world beyond. So now it may seem that we have a world where the powerful are conquering the powerless, but that is only temporary. And that is why I generally assume that when imperialists are engaging in killing of innocents, they are really atheists. Because if they truly believed in a god or a goddess or a pantheon of gods and goddesses, they would know that there would be consequences for what they do. Whether, as I believe, in the world beyond, or as some religions teach, through reincarnation or transmigration, being reincarnated or transmigrated into a lower form of life, or a person of a lower caste, maybe even a cockroach, perhaps. That would be just, I think. But it would appear to me that the people who are doing this have no awareness of that at all. And again, therefore, they are truly atheists, or as Thomas Henry Huxley used the term agnostics. The term agnostic, contrary to many redefinitions of the term, does not refer to somebody who is unsure about whether there is a higher being or beings. An agnostic is someone who is waiting for evidence and is saying that no, there is no evidence. And so essentially, an agnostic is a religious skeptic. So an agnostic is somebody who is sure, because the idea is evidence, empirical evidence. I am not an agnostic with respect to spiritual issues. I am as a scientist, as a social scientist, yes, I am an agnostic as a social scientist, but not from a spiritual perspective. There is no way that I could possibly be an agnostic or an atheist. So I wanted to read you an article which relates to what I mentioned about the war lasting possibly another 7 months. This article is from Reuters, a news agency that was originally based in London, but is now in New York City. The headline: Israel says Gaza war likely to last another 7 months as tanks probe Rafah. The author is Nidal El-Maccabi. Dateline: May 29th, 2024. That is today. There is a picture of a soldier standing on top of a tank at the top. I don't know whether this is recent or not, but it is very sad nonetheless. I respect those people who have refused to serve in this war. I respect them. I do not respect those who have not refused, who have gone in and engaged in combat and are killing innocents, the indigenous people of Rafah. Anyway, here is the story. I could go on, but there's no point to that. Israel sent tanks on raids into Rafah on Wednesday and predicted its war on Hamas in Gaza would continue all year after Washington said the Rafah assault did not amount to a major ground operation that would trigger a change in U.S. policy. Comment. It appears that Biden is willing to change his mind on a dime. For a long time, he said it would. Now, he's changed his mind. Convenient. Very convenient. Tragic, but convenient. That seems to characterize much of U.S. foreign policy, doesn't it? Convenience. What is convenient for the imperialism of the empire. That's what matters. Continuing with the article. Israeli tanks moved into the heart of Rafah for the first time on Tuesday, despite an order from the International Court of Justice to end its attacks on the city, where many Palestinians had taken refuge from bombardment elsewhere. The World Court said Israel had not explained how it would keep evacuees from Rafah safe and provide water, food, and medicine. Its ruling also called on Hamas to release hostages taken from Israel on October 7th, immediately and unconditionally. Rafah residents said Israeli tanks had pushed into Tel al-Sultan in the west and Yibna and near Shambura in the center before retreating towards a buffer zone on the border with Egypt, namely on the border with Africa, rather than staying put as they have in other offensives. We received distress calls from residents in Tel al-Sultan, where drones targeted displaced citizens as they moved from areas where they were staying toward the safe areas, the deputy director of ambulance and emergency services in Rafah said. Palestinian health officials said 19 citizens had been killed in Israeli airstrikes and shelling across Gaza. Israel accuses Hamas militants of hiding among civilians, something Gaza's ruling Islamist group denies. Health Minister Majed Abu Rahman urged Washington to pressure Israel to open the Rafah border to aid, saying there was no indication that Israeli authorities would do so soon, and that patients in besieged Gaza were dying for lack of treatment. Israeli forces have achieved tactical control over the Philadelphia corridor buffer zone that runs along the border between the Gaza Strip and Egypt, namely between Asia and Egypt. An Israeli military official said on Wednesday, such control would prevent Hamas from smuggling weapons into Gaza. National Security Advisor Tajci Hanabar said earlier, fighting in Gaza will continue throughout 2024. Now listen to these next two words, at least. There you go, at least. So 7 months is what they're saying now, but there is a clue. That 7 months may not be 7 months because it says at least. What is at least? I don't know. Let me go back to the article. He added, signaling that Israel was not ready to end the war as demanded by Hamas, as part of a deal that would see the exchange of hostages it holds for Palestinian prisoners. The fighting in Rafah is not a pointless war. And it be said, reiterating the claim, the aim was to end Hamas rule in Gaza and to stop it and its allies from attacking Israel. But U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Wednesday, Israel needed to craft a post-war plan for Gaza, and that without it, lawlessness, chaos, and a Hamas comeback in the enclave could ensue. Comment, if the statement now is that at least till the end of this year, what is Blinken talking about? Post-war, 7 months, 7 years, 17 years, 70 years? There's no way of knowing. Basically, as long as they can get away with it, as long as they can do it, it would appear to me. And again, I'm trying to be careful to hold up my policy not to engage in direct attacks on particular governments, which I don't think I have done yet. But U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Israel needed to craft a post-war plan. The United States, Israel's closest ally, reiterated its opposition to a major ground offensive in Rafah on Tuesday, while saying it did not believe such an operation was underway. Pause. I don't understand what they're basing that on. It would appear to me that such an operation is underway. But it shows how words can be crafted to suit the intentions of the speaker. What is a major ground invasion? A major ground invasion is whatever you want it to mean. What is major? What is minor? Those are relative terms that can be redefined for the purposes of one's own objectives and advantages. So I don't know why Blinken is saying that what is happening in Rafah right now is not a major ground invasion. Maybe he does. Maybe he is lying. Maybe he is not lying. I have no idea. Maybe he knows something that I don't know. I'm sure he knows a lot of things that I don't know. But whether he is lying, I have no idea. But it's very sad nonetheless, because I think that there is what I would personally call, a major ground invasion in Rafah. The United States, Israel's closest ally, reiterated its opposition to a major ground offensive in Rafah. More than 36,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israel's Gaza offensive, the enclave's health ministry said. Israel launched its air and ground war in Hamas after Hamas-led militants attacked southern Israeli communities on October 7th, killing 1,200 people and seizing more than 250 hostages, according to Israeli tallies. Mediator Qatar was expected to give Israel's latest ceasefire and hostage release proposal to Hamas on Tuesday. A person familiar with the issue said there was no immediate word on Wednesday from Hamas, which has said tanks are pointless unless Israel ends its offensive on Rafah. The armed wing of Hamas and that of allies, Islamic Jihad, said they confronted invading forces in Rafah with anti-tank rockets and mortar bombs and blew up explosive devices they had planted, resulting in numerous successful hits. The Israeli military said 3 Israeli soldiers were killed and 3 badly wounded. Public broadcaster Can Radio said an explosive device had been set off in a Rafah building. Palestinian health officials said several people were wounded by Israeli fire, and stores of aid were set ablaze in eastern Rafah, where residents said Israeli bombardment had destroyed many homes in an area Israel had ordered evacuated. Pause. Using the term Eastern Rafah, while obviously technically correct, is misleading because you are talking about a tiny little area, basically a neighborhood, a small neighborhood. And so there is really no Eastern Rafah, except, again, technically, it is just Rafah. So I don't know what Eastern Rafah would be and why that term is being used. I guess it makes sense, but there should be an explanation there that Eastern Rafah is simply Rafah, because you can't separate Rafah from Eastern Rafah. It's the same place. It's all the same place. A tiny section of Gaza. Gaza Health Ministry spokesperson Ashraf Al-Qidra called for an immediate safe pathways for fuel, medical aid, and medical teams to Rafah and northern Gaza, where he said there was no help for the wounded. Around 1 million Palestinians who had taken shelter in Rafah at the southern ends of the Gaza Strip have now fled after Israeli orders to evacuate. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees reported on Tuesday. The Palestinian Red Crescent Society said it had evacuated its medical teams from its field hospital in the Al Mawasi area, a designated civilian evacuation zone, because of continued bombardments. In the nearby city of Khan Yunis, an Israeli airstrike killed 3 people overnight, including Salameh Baraka, a former senior Hamas police officer. Medics and Hamas media said another killed 4 people, including 2 children. Medics said. In northern Gaza, forces shelled Gaza City neighborhoods and moved deeper into Jabalia, where residents said large residential districts were destroyed. Malnutrition has become widespread in Gaza as aid deliveries have slowed to a trickle. That is the story. That is the entire story. It is a tragedy. I don't know what to make of it or what to say about it, except what the story is. I am hesitant to offer any additional comments because I don't want to violate my policy not to attack directly any particular nations. And so instead, I will simply focus on Gaza as an indigenous area. The Gazans are the indigenous people of Palestine, as are the Jordanians, for example. They are also the indigenous people of Palestine. There really is no difference between the Jordanians and the Gazans, except for political borders. They are the same people. They are all the indigenous people of that area. But regardless, that's political. That's all a political matter. It has no relationship to the suffering of souls in that area. The suffering appears to me to be an ongoing prospect. There is no end that I can see that is in sight. And that is what troubles me. For a while, a week ago, I believed that maybe in 3 weeks, it would be over. So what happens in a week? What happens in a week? Why did it go from 3 weeks to 7 months or more? Why? I cannot answer that question. I wish I could, but I am not an insider. I do not attend the cabinet meetings. I have no special knowledge of the situation. I know no more or no less than anybody else who reads and listens to the stories. There is nothing else that I can say that would be really meaningful. And so at this point, having read the article and given a very scant commentary, I will say, for the time being, this has been Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Metarealism. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.